My wife told me he was just a friend. For a long time, I believed her. Then one morning, I found a key in her purse. It belonged to him. At first, she gave me a simple explanation. I wanted to believe it. But that little key led me somewhere I never expected to go. And what I found there made me realize my wife hadn't just been hiding another man. She'd been hiding another life. The key was sitting at the bottom of my wife's purse. It was a small brass key with a little plastic number tag on it. I only found it because Linda had asked me to look for a receipt while she was getting ready for work. I pulled the receipt out. Then I saw the key. I held it up. "What's this?" She turned around too quick. "What?" "This." She walked over and took it from my hand. "Oh, that's nothing." "Nothing." I watched her put it back in her purse. "Whose key is it?" She hesitated. "Eric's." I knew Eric. He worked with Linda. I'd met him a few times over the years. He'd been to a couple office parties. Once he'd helped us move a piece of furniture. Linda had mentioned him plenty of times. "He's just a friend," she'd always said. At the time, I believed her. I didn't know that little key was going to change how I looked at the last few years of my marriage. My name's David. I'm 60. Linda and I had been married 31 years. We had 2 grown kids and 4 grandkids. I'd spent most of my working life as a mechanic for the city. Heavy equipment, trucks, street maintenance, nothing glamorous. I liked fixing things. If a machine started making a noise it shouldn't make, I wanted to know where the noise was coming from. Marriage was different. With marriage, I guess I figured if something was really wrong, you'd know. Linda worked part-time at a medical office. Our life had gotten quieter as we got older. Kids moved out. We ate dinner later, watched television, took care of the house. Wasn't a bad life. Just wasn't the same life we'd had 20 years earlier. And somewhere along the way, Eric became part of Linda's routine. At first, I didn't care. She'd mention him at dinner. Eric was complaining about his car again. Or, Eric found a good place for lunch. I'd joke about it. "You two spend enough time together. Maybe you should start charging each other rent." She'd laugh. Then she'd say, "He's just a friend." And I'd say, "Okay." I meant it. Or at least I thought I did. About a year before I found the key, Linda started staying late at work more often. At first, it was once or twice a week. Sometimes she'd come home at 7, sometimes 8. I'd ask, "Everything okay?" "Yeah." "We're short-staffed." I'd nod. Wasn't much else to say. Then I noticed she started taking her phone with her around the house. Bathroom, kitchen, bedroom. If a message came in while we were eating, she'd pick up the phone almost right away. One evening, I looked over. She was smiling at the screen. I said, "What's funny?" She locked the phone. "Nothing." Looked like a good one. She shrugged. "Work." I didn't push. Didn't want to become the husband who checked his wife's phone every time it buzzed. I'd seen men do that. Didn't want to live that way. So I trusted her. Then there was the key. After she took it from me, she went back to getting ready. I stood in the bedroom doorway. "Why does Eric have a key in your purse?" She sighed. "It's an old key." "To what?" "Some storage room." "Where?" "Near the office." "Why would you have it?" "I told you. Sometimes I pick things up for work." She was already reaching for her coat. It sounded reasonable. That's what bothered me later. The explanation wasn't crazy. It was just good enough to end the conversation. She kissed me on the cheek. "Don't make this into something." I didn't. "You were asking a lot of questions." "I found a key in your purse." She picked up her bag. "It's nothing, David." Then she left. I stood there a minute. The house was quiet. I went back into the bedroom and looked at the purse. Didn't touch it. Just stood there. Then I walked away. For the next few days, I tried to forget about the key. Couldn't. I remembered the little number tag. 3 digits. Didn't know why I'd remembered it. Maybe because something about the key had bothered me from the moment I saw it. A few days later, Linda was making coffee in the kitchen. I said, "How's Eric's car?" She looked at me. "What?" "His car. You said it was giving him trouble." "Oh, fine, I guess." She turned back to the coffee maker. I said, "You two still having lunch sometimes?" She looked over her shoulder. "Sometimes." "Okay." There was a pause. Then she said, "Why?" "No reason." She watched me a second. "He's just a friend." I know. And I did. At least that's what I kept telling myself. A week later, I was cleaning out some old paperwork in the garage. Linda had left a stack of receipts on the workbench. One of them caught my eye. It was from a restaurant I'd never heard of. I almost put it back. Then I noticed the date. It was one of the nights Linda had told me she'd gone to dinner with 2 women from work. I picked up another receipt. Same area, different restaurant, another date. I put them back. That's when I realized I was doing something I hadn't wanted to do. I was checking. I went inside and looked through some old emails. I found Eric's name in a message about a furniture delivery. Linda had written, "Can you make sure he's there when they deliver it?" The email was almost a year old. I stared at the screen. Didn't know what furniture she was talking about. Then I remembered something else. Months earlier, Eric had mentioned moving into an apartment. I'd asked Linda if she'd ever been there. She laughed. "No. Why would I go there?" At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. Now I couldn't get that sentence out of my head. I went back to the garage, sat in my truck, didn't start it, just sat there. I'd spent 31 years building a life with this woman. Didn't want to tear it apart over a key and a few restaurant receipts. So I made myself wait. Then one Thursday evening, Linda told me she had to stay late. I watched her leave, waited about 20 minutes. Then I got in my truck. Wasn't proud of what I was doing. I followed her. She didn't drive toward the office, drove across town, then turned into a small apartment complex. I parked far enough away she wouldn't see me. Linda got out, walked toward one of the buildings. Then she stopped, took something from her purse. Even from where I was sitting, I knew what it was. The key. She put it in the lock. The door opened. I sat there with both hands on the steering wheel. Don't know how long I stayed there. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20. Part of me wanted to drive away. Another part needed to see what happened next. Eventually, Linda came back outside. Eric was with her. They stood near the entrance. He touched her arm. She smiled. Wasn't much else I needed to see. I got out of my truck. Linda noticed me first. Her face changed. Eric looked over. Nobody said anything. I walked toward him, reached into my pocket and pulled out the little key. Held it up. "You want to tell me what this is?" Linda looked at the key, then at me. "David, how long?" She looked at Eric, then back at me. "David, please, how long?" Eric stepped back. Linda took a breath. "Almost 2 years." I nodded. Don't know why. Maybe because part of me had already known. Maybe because hearing it out loud made it real. I asked, "Was it just him?" She looked confused. "What do you mean? Was there anybody else?" "No." I believed her. Don't know why. Maybe because by then I was tired of asking questions. Then I asked the one that mattered. "Why do you have a key?" She started crying. "Because I'm here sometimes." I looked at the apartment door. "Sometimes?" She nodded. I asked, "How long have you been planning this?" She didn't answer. I waited. Finally, she said, "Eric and I talked about eventually living together." I looked at her. "Eventually? After you retire?" That hurt more than I expected. I'd been planning my retirement for years. Linda and I had talked about traveling, maybe moving somewhere warmer, fixing up the house, spending more time with the grandkids. Apparently, she'd been having a different conversation. She hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been waiting for a different future. I looked at Eric. He didn't say anything. I didn't either. Just walked back to my truck. That night, Linda slept in the guest room. I barely slept. Around 3 in the morning, I got up and went into the kitchen. Her coffee mug was beside the sink. Her sweater was hanging over a chair. The refrigerator hummed. Everything looked normal. It wasn't. Next morning, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. I pulled out a folder. Bank accounts, retirement statements, mortgage information, insurance. Wasn't trying to punish Linda. Was trying to make sure I didn't make a bad decision while I was angry. I called an attorney. Then I called my brother. Didn't tell him every detail. Just enough. He said, "You okay?" I said, "No." There was a pause. "Need anything?" "Not yet." That was all I could say. Later that afternoon, Linda sat across from me. She looked exhausted. "I never wanted to hurt you." I looked at her. "I know. I didn't know how to tell you. You could have told me." She looked down. I was afraid. Of what? Starting over. I nodded. I understood that. Didn't make it okay. I said, "If you want a different life, I'm not going to stand in your way." She looked surprised. "But I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen." She started crying again. Didn't know what to do with that. So I stayed quiet. The divorce took months. Linda moved out. She and Eric stayed together. The apartment became part of their new life. My lawyer made sure our finances got handled properly. I didn't lose everything. Didn't win everything either. It was just a divorce. There were forms, meetings, numbers, things to sign. Worst parts were usually the quiet ones. My daughter asked me one evening, "Are you and Mom really getting divorced?" "Yeah." "Why?" I looked at her. Didn't want to put her in the middle. So I said, "We couldn't keep going the way we were." She knew there was more. Didn't push. I appreciated that. A few months later, I moved into a smaller house. First week felt strange. Less space, less furniture, less noise. But I started sleeping better. I found an old pickup truck sitting under a cover in the garage. I'd bought it years earlier and never finished fixing it. So I started working on it. Nothing major. Brakes, a few hoses, some wiring, small things. But I liked having something in front of me that didn't require me to wonder what somebody else was thinking. On Saturdays, my grandson started coming over. He'd sit on an upside-down bucket and hand me tools. "Grandpa, what's this?" "That's a wrench." "No, what's this one?" "Also a wrench." He laughed. One afternoon, he found a box of old keys on my workbench. He picked one up. "What's this?" I looked at it. It was the spare key to my house. I took it from him. "That's mine," he smiled. "Can I have it?" "No." He laughed and ran outside. I stood there holding the key. For months, I'd thought about the key Linda had carried in her purse. Thought about what it meant. A door to a life she'd been building without me. But I'd spent too much time thinking about where that door led. I looked at my own key in my hand. Then I heard my grandson from the driveway. "Grandpa, you coming?" I put the key in my pocket. "Yeah, give me a minute." I shut the garage door and walked outside. Linda had found a key to the life she wanted. I was finally finding my way back to mine.